Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining in for the Laidlaw and Allen Report. I'm Kevin Allen, and I'm joined by my usual podcast partner, former NHL defenseman Tom Laidlaw, of course, who played for the New York Rangers and Los Angeles Kings. And, here we are, Tom, in the midst of the off season. And, what we hear people talking about, obviously, is, when we're going to be able to start again. And the Dallas Stars, they have a much bigger issue to deal with, and that is that they announced yesterday that two of their top players, Anton Khudobin, and it's interesting that I call him now Ben Bishop. I'll get back to Anton Khudobin, but Ben Bishop and Tyler Seguin both had surgeries, and they're going to be out, and that opens the door.
5 months too, right?
5 months, yeah. And if we start on January 1st. Which I don't believe we will. But if we did, they're not going to be ready until April. Right. And that leads us back to Anton Khudobin suddenly becomes just as important to the regular season next year than he was in the postseason. And, this is a guy that's never really been, even though he's 34 years old, had to carry a team for an extended period, certainly not a whole season.
Yeah. And now the way everybody looks at him is based on the way he played in the playoffs, and he was fantastic. But that's really not, there's a long enough track record to show that's really not who he has been. That doesn't mean he can't be that again. But yeah, for a team that that I really wasn't too confident in, but had a good run in the playoffs, obviously going to the finals, to now think that they're going to be relying on Khudobin. So are they getting the Khudobin from the playoffs, or are they getting the Khudobin from that he's had the way he's played most of his career? That'd be the question. So,
but here's my question to you as a former player. Khudobin, with a forward or a defenseman, if you're 34 years old, everybody has a pretty good idea of what kind of player you are.
Yeah.
And, even if you were playing 10 minutes a game, you can sort of tell that, if a guy's on fourth line for a long time and you watch him play, that he's not a top line performer. But I think with a goalie, it's a little bit harder to read. Like, it really is about opportunity. And once you get pegged as a backup goalie, and he was pegged as a good backup goalie, there's an art to that, because you sit for an extended period and then you're expected to come in and win a game, like you're important. So it's a really difficult role to play. And also, you're asked to be like a best friend of the number one goalie. Like, coaches expect that.
Yeah.
Like, they don't want any attention.
Yeah.
They want you to be a buddy with that number one goalie, so that if things aren't going well, you can pat him on the back or talk to him about what he's doing and all that kind of stuff. And they expect you to be a cheerleader.
Yeah. Totally.
Which Khudobin is. Does a good job of that.
Yeah, he's got a good personality for being a backup goaltender.
For sure. Like, he's great. And, he got his chance. So, I guess my point is this is not like asking a third liner to step up and play on the top line.
Definitely.
Like, there's every chance that Khudobin could shoulder the load.
Yeah, his confidence is probably at an all-time high right now after coming off the playoffs he had too. So, another big part of it too is how does the team play in front of him? Like, if a team just plays a wide open, think of Martin Brodeur. He's a fantastic goaltender, Hall of Fame, one of the best ever, if not the best ever. But the team he played behind played a really solid defensive game too, right? He knew pretty much every game and every shot what was going to be happening. Forcing him to the outside. If it's a 2-on-1, defenseman's going to take away the pass, so that he can concentrate on the shooter much more. So, I think that plays a big role in it too. I think that maybe that will help. Hopefully the Dallas continues to play that good, solid defensive game, which they did last year. And then that will help the goaltending situation too. I think that's a big part of a goalie's a goalie knowing what he's going to be getting from his teammates is really, I think, a big part of how he plays.
Yeah.
You see.
Well, I've never believed in the phrase injury prone. To me, it's just luck and, or lack of luck and roll of the dice. Some guys you get injured, sometimes you don't. And I remember I live in Detroit, and everybody talked about Matthew Stafford was injury prone. He was injured every year for 3 or 4 years. Then all of a sudden he didn't have an injury for 8 or 9 years. He didn't have that. So, but saying all that, if you're the Dallas Stars and Ben Bishop's history, he's been injured a lot.
Yeah.
So my question is, as a former player, even if you don't believe in being injury prone, do you get so frustrated that, your guy's constantly battling something or another, that you start to think, we're better off when Khudobin is, because he's a constant.
Yes.
You know that he'll be in there, that he's durable.
To me, part of being a top-notch goaltender is being reliable, right? Both reliable in your play and being reliable and being available to play. And so I'm with you totally. Like if Bishop plays great, but then he only plays 50 or only available to play 50% of the games, then he's not reliable, right? And it's maybe not even his fault. It's just because of injuries, like you said. I think it's a big thing. Yeah, if I'm a general manager or coach, I mean, part of so for me, for example, like I wasn't like a star player, but the thing with me was that I usually played. So the coach knew that he could pretty much every game, put Tom Laidlaw's name in the lineup and know what I was going to do. I was going to be reliable. I was going to make the good first pass. I was going to play the body all the time. So, I wasn't playing because I was a huge difference maker. It's because the coach knew all the time what he was going to get from me. So I think it's a big part of it. Yeah.
What, this is a little sidebar, but I think our viewers would be interested in that. What did you play with when you look back on that you should have? I mean, did you play with broken bones? I know the spleen situation, but you didn't know how seriously you were injured. And I
think the one that I look back at and kind of laugh about the most was I tore my tricep muscle, and it rolled up in a ball in the back of my arm. And like every time I went to push off on somebody, it's like somebody sticking a knife in my arm. But I was able to play. So it was fine. And the trainer knew about it, but we just didn't tell anybody else. And one day the doctor came into the in between periods in a game at Madison Square Garden. And I was sitting in the trainer's table, and I said, "Doc, take a look at this." And he took a look at it. He like in shock. He's going, "What are you doing?" Like he couldn't believe I was playing with it, But, that was part of playing, and it still is now, but part of playing now is like kind of the badge of honor is to play through those injuries. If it's not a broken bone or something that's going to do more damage, then you play through it. That's just the way it was. So it wasn't like I was some special guy to play with a torn tricep muscle, but it was. But that was when I look back at it, and I still have the scar tissue there in the back of my arm too. So
that you had surgery on that?
Nope, no surgery. It's just
wow.
I don't know how it healed. Because I saw one was a football player or whatever. It was out for the season with a torn tricep muscle, and I was like, well, I was told I had a torn tricep muscle, and I know I could feel the ball in the back of my arm where the tricep muscle was rolled up. So I don't know what.
That's hard to to hear you describe that. How many surgeries? Obviously, you had to have your spleen removed. How many surgeries did you have as an NHL player?
Well, I had a shoulder surgery, a spleen surgery, and it's funny because I broke my nose probably like most guys do, like 12 or 15 times or something. The first time I broke it when I was playing junior hockey in my hometown, and I was like 14 or 15. And stupid. We were skating at the end of practice, and I was like a smart aleck, and I dove to try to go across the finish line. I dove right in the back of some guy's skate when he's taking a stride and smashed my nose. So my parents went and got surgery done on my nose, which was, I guess it's not their fault. They didn't know I was going to break it another 12 times, but I had the cast over my face the whole bit, and then went out and broke it the next season again. Anyways, it got to the point at the end there with a broken nose where you could just put the two thumbs on either side of it and squash it together. And yeah. It was funny stuff because when I went on Survivor, one of the funniest things that we had a meeting with all the producers, and they're more the relaxed guys. They're sitting around drinking beer and eating pizza, and they want to hear a bunch of stories, hockey stories. It really wasn't much of an interview; it was more hockey stories. So they're talking about, if you had, do you have your own teeth? And I said, well, no, I had to buy these, and how'd you break them? Well, I got hit with a stick, or bit a top off a beer bottle one time, broke a tooth, and that kind of stuff. And they're talking about broken noses and everything. They're just, these are all Hollywood guys, so it's kind of funny seeing the reaction about the injuries.
Yeah. How many teeth did you lose in the course of your career?
Probably about 6 or 7. My mother, when I was a young boy, back then they had these big mouth guards that went over the front of your mouth, and it would just cover totally, so you were totally protected. But the kids at a certain age started taking off the mouth guards, but my mother would make me wear the mouth guards, so I begged her for years to be able to take off the mouth guard. She finally relented and let me take off the mouth guard. First game I played without it, got hit in the
oh, jeez.
Dude, she was, at that point, it didn't matter, right? Because you're not going to move on at that point. The tooth's gone. So,
wow. How old were you then?
Oh, I must have been, 9 years old or something like that. It was,
It's the deflections that always get you.
Totally. Yeah, you're right. It was just a freak. I can't remember how it happened. But my mother was funny, and I think a lot of hockey mothers are like this too. She said she passed away many years ago. She had a battle with cancer, sitting around talking. She goes, if we do it again, I'd never give you a pair of skates, because when I ruptured my spleen, there's no cell phone. So I got a call from the emergency room that I'm getting my spleen removed. I'm in Boston. She's up in Canada. When I had my shoulder surgery, I was in college. And I had to call from the emergency room there that I'm getting shoulder surgery. So the poor woman's like, God, what's going on with my son? So,
yeah, I can imagine. Well, there are people today now, although I think it's football more than hockey, that parents won't allow their children to play, football, mostly because of the concussion issue. And we have that issue in hockey, although not to the same extent. I think
cleared up, isn't it? Remember we went through a whole rash of concussions there. It was after the lockout when they changed a lot of the rules and the play was faster. And that's really settled down now, hasn't it?
Yeah, well, it has, but they established protocol for it and all that. I mean, I think that has really helped. You have to prove and all that. And I felt like when that was first put in, when you put the spotters in, I think the greatest impediment to that actually working were the players themselves.
Oh, totally, yes.
Like they did not like being told. I remember Sidney Crosby telling us on the media, I think I know, he had gone through post-concussion syndrome, and he goes, I'm pretty sure I know my brain better than some guy up in the press box, and I know the science for it, and I'm educated to how this all works. And just because he sees me a little wobbly for a second, he said, I'm pretty sure I'm capable of making that call myself.
But and he said, but I got to tell you, when we play, and I think there's still a lot of it, it still is I just ding my head a little bit.
The whole idea is you're trying to protect players from themselves. I mean, they make poor decisions, especially if they've been hit in the head.
Yeah, you think about it, right? They're not thinking clearly.
Yeah. So, and I remember the outrage when we had the change in all that, and I would just chuckle to myself because nobody was putting it in there for any other reason other than they were trying to prevent players from getting post-concussion syndrome. What was the advantage to doing that?
I know. It is funny watching too when they catch it on video, when the trainer, so they call down to the trainer, and now the trainer goes over and whispers to the player, what's happened, right? Because he just got in a collision, and the trainer's saying to him, listen, you've got to leave. And some of the players are just outraged. They're looking at him.
No, that's right. Yeah. Well, I mean, but it's a bizarre situation because in this country, especially in recent years, people have talked about you being your own best medical advocate, that stand up for your medical needs. Don't be afraid to tell a doctor, I want this, or I need to do that. But when a player's doing that in that situation, we think, well, don't be an idiot.
Yeah.
Just go in and, look, it's unscientific. If you're examining a guy because you don't know, and a lot of times from what we're told, I don't know that I've ever had a concussion, but from what I'm told, sometimes the symptoms don't even show up for 24 hours.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's totally different sometimes, and people I think assume wrongly that you have to get hit in the head too to have a concussion. The reality is, your brain's floating around inside your skull, and anything that causes the brain to bounce against the skull, that causes a concussion or a potential concussion. So I think that's part of it too, that people see just a hard hit and think, well, how would he get a concussion? So
well, I'm not sure how we got off on that, but going back to the Dallas Stars and their two players, I want this is one of those things too where Gary Bettman has said his on his top of his wish list is to play starting January 1st, but I've heard February. I've heard 48 games. I've heard 56 games. I've heard, that we would play till the NBC had to go run off and do the Olympics, and then we'd take time off, and then we'd come back and play the postseason. There are all sorts of scenarios. As I think the bottom line is, I don't think anybody knows. And the pandemic has surged again, so that means. I think it's pretty clear that owners want fans in the building some way, shape, or form. And so what does that mean? Does that mean, we'll do 2,000 fans? Will that help enough?
And then again, we go back to the finances of it too. You look at the numbers, like we talked about it, where it's such a gate revenue generating sport that, man.
Well, I've got some numbers that I researched. I'm actually going to do a story on it this week. But the average take in terms of revenue for every NHL game. Now, you got to remember the New York Rangers do better than this, but the Florida Panthers do less.
Right.
So, but the average take is somewhere around $1.7 million. It's exactly 1.68 is the average. So when you multiply that all out, you get a revenue in the area of $2.5 billion for the season in terms of revenue, which it makes sense. But then when you do, and not everybody goes to the cap, but if everybody went to the cap, you're going to have player cost of $2.1 billion. So and the other thing is when the NFL does this, even if they put 14,000 in a 600,000, that's still bonus money for them because they can play to an empty stadium because of their television money.
Totally.
Now, the television money in the NHL, I don't know what the Canadian figure was, but I know it's pretty good. But better, I think probably better than the NBC. But NBC is paying $200 million a year, but that's only $6 million per team.
Yep.
So if you're getting no money and having to pay 82 games of players' salaries at $2.1 billion, you divide that by 30 teams. You're talking.
Yeah.
That's now we're up to the 60 and $80 million. Now, here's the real problem with all that, and it's one nobody talks about. The Rangers, because they have fancier and more lucrative revenue streams, like their local Madison Square television deal probably affords them greater revenue just by showing the games on TV than I'm sure that, in fact, I know this, the Florida Panthers or the Nashville Predators. So the Nashville Predators might be above, or let's just say the Arizona Coyotes and Florida Panthers are going to be above that $80 million loss. And the Rangers, who have the most money, are going to be somewhere lower. They only may lose $20 million.
So if we play 48 games so already they've negotiated a deal where the escrow, which is money that's going to be taken out of the players' contracts, is already capped at 20%. So they've got to go back now and renegotiate and say, well, guys, if we're going to go down to 48 games, that means it's a prorated portion of your full salaries. So the players are now playing fewer games. They're losing money, and the owners are losing money. So if you're playing, the owners end up losing money. They're not making any. They won't make any money probably.
No, they'll lose money. Well, that's why you have some owners who, according to reports, I think it was ESPN reported this. I hope I'm right on that some owners have said to Gary Bettman, why don't we just not play this year?
Yeah. So that's the thing, right? So if they're not going to have any seats, or even if it's 5,000 people in the building, whatever the number is, if it's not enough for the owners to at least break even, then why are they going to play just so that the players can make some money, right?
Well, I mean, I think the argument for playing is that you're still sustaining and you're marketing your game, and you don't want to go a whole season without playing. But we've done that before, and fans came back.
And they came back with a passion too. I thought that when they came back after the lockout, no 405, the fans were more hungry for it.
Yeah, they did. They did come back for that. So, but I mean, can we count on that again? I guess we can, but I don't really know.
I mean, I don't want it to happen either. I'm with you. I think it's better for the sport to keep playing.
Yeah, to keep going. And see, I don't think you can put 5,000 people in there. I watch those NFL games, and they show in the stands, and there's not that many that have fans.
Right.
But they show some guy and his wife setting up in mask in row 29, and then the closest guy is 4 first downs, 40 yards, and 27 rows away.
You can't do that in hockey. Right?
We can't do that in hockey. No, I mean, we can do that maybe with 2,000 fans.
Right. Then why even bother, though, right? I mean, because you still have to hire all the security. Most of these places are
that's another thing that doesn't get talked about. It takes 400 to 500 extra employees on game day. You're talking security, medical personnel.
Right.
I was talking to someone recently in a team, and he pointed out that he gives speeches about what happens in the local economy on days when his team plays, and he compares it to it's like you bring 18,000 people in, you're like a small village.
Yeah.
And how many people does it take to run a small village? Well, he says between 400 and 500. You need security, you need medical personnel, because people become ill, they have heart attacks, a lot of things happen, and so you got to have them there. You got to have people selling food,
right,
and that sort of thing. So
it isn't necessarily that if you reduce it to 2,000 people that you can reduce the staff work in there too. I think a lot of them are unionized, so you have to have the same number of people in the building. So, it's so complicated. And then I haven't been able to get a figure for this yet, but like how much does it cost for a team to travel? I think in today's world, not counting the West Coast teams, because they're in a kind of the world in their own. They travel more, obviously. They spend more nights overnight. But I think when on a 41 game season, the best I can tell from talking to people, you can sort of just average that they're going to spend 60 nights on the road, because there's a lot of flying home now after games. Yep.
And we don't have as many of those one game road trips. We have some, but we don't have as many. So, what's the cost for travel? That you've got to pay too. And, it's, I don't know how big the delegation would be that travels with a team. I'd say, 22 players, coaches, it's probably
35, 40 people.
I was going to say 35. Yeah. So let's call it 35. So you need 35 hotel rooms, because nobody doubles up anymore. This is not the 1970s.
Shame that is too. We'll discuss that. That's a shame.
Yeah. So 35. So what's the average room rate now in major metro areas? $200, because they're not staying at the Motel 6.
Yeah. I'm sure they're getting a better rate, but still, it's
that's probably a couple hundred.
Yep.
Or maybe it's 150. I don't know, 150 to 200, somewhere in that. So what's that? $7,000 for every night times 60. It all adds up to jet fuel that, you have the maintenance on the corporate jet, the pilots that have to be paid.
So if you're an owner that, like we've talked about this before, they're wealthy individuals, but they're wealthy because they're smart with their money.
Yes.
So we're going to pay, I'm going to lose, even if I lose $40 million, not the 80, because we're playing a reduced schedule.
Yeah.
Lose $40 million so an NHL hockey player can make millions of dollars.
Yeah. Well, and we're painting this picture not because we think that the owner should cancel the season. Far from it. Like I think when you buy a sports team, you have to accept that it's a public trust.
Yeah.
That even though you own the team, that it belongs to that community. And when you buy it, you're telling that community, I'll look after your public trust.
Right.
I get it that it's your team, and I'm going to make the money on that. So I'm going to make some tough, hardline decisions because I don't want to lose money on that. But I think you have to respect that, that this is sort of a community thing.
Yeah.
Like it's not in any contract anywhere, but I think you should accept that responsibility.
It's a good way to look at it too, because you want those people to come in the doors from a business standpoint.
Sure.
You have to show them that you care about them. You're giving them a good product so they come in the doors and spend money. Yeah.
Well, here's an interesting thing. Yesterday, I'm trying to think now. I've lost her name now. She was a backup goalie. Small was her last name, a Canadian backup goalie from the 1998 Olympic team,
right.
and written a book about her experiences in hockey and talked really a fascinating, really nice, fun interview, because she talked about things about like being a backup goalie and, that role and sort of accepting it and hating it at the same time, which is all part of it. But she pointed out when she was involved in the women's startup league, and I thought this was all fascinating. It's like she was general manager of a team, and when you're a new team, you had to decide what was more important to the team: to get sponsorship dollars, like a $10,000 sponsor or to work real hard to get more butts in the seats to watch, because that's hard work.
Yeah.
It's hard work to get people to come in and sit down and watch, particularly in a younger sport like women's professional hockey.
Yeah, totally.
So I was listening to that and I'm thinking, it's probably the same. I mean, if you're the Florida Panthers, what's more important to you, that you get increased attendance by 200 or you get $100,000 sponsor?
Yeah, I guess you got to look at, so obviously the sponsor is going to spend more money if there's more people in the building too, right? So
I mean, you're trying to do both.
Yeah.
But sometimes, when a team, it's all self-fulfilling as well. Like, the size of the staff of the advertising and the sales staff of the Panthers, I'm assuming isn't as big as they would have in some of the other areas where they're successful.
Right. You think it should be though, right? Because you need to do more work, right?
Yeah.
In a city like Toronto, it's like you just open the doors and they come in. But
but I think we're learning that even in like major markets. I know Ken Holland used to say, like, when we had talked to him about marketing and all the changes that the league was going in, I remember he'd say to me, what's good marketing? You win.
True.
And people come. And there is some validity to that. But I think the game has changed enough now where the sophisticated fan does expect more than just the wins and losses, because the price of the tickets is so high that, the game experience, like what are you getting? Right. I remember when Tampa, for example, they were the first one that I heard of. I don't know if they were actually the first, but I've heard of no other team that said, okay, you're a season ticket holder. We give you a card that gets you a discount at all of the concession stands and everything else. So you go up and you show that card, you're a season ticket holder, and you get 20% off the hot dogs, 20% off the $11 beers, 20% off the jersey sales. Right. And like, that was a really big deal. Like I wrote a story on it because, the fan base, I went around and talked to people and they just loved it. They said, it's the first time that people recognize that, hey, like, I'm shelling out all this money, and
it's true though. But you think of buildings like, you go to Madison Square Garden, you go into Nashville, you go to Vegas, like it's a real event when you go to those games too.
Sure.
You're right. Winning definitely makes a difference. More people are going to come. But don't you think it's partly like having that entertainment? Because not every game, even with a good team, not every game is going to be an exciting game, but it's an event to go to those buildings, right?
Yeah, for sure. I've had this argument too. When Vegas was in, I will never forget this too. Like and this is really human nature. I get it, but it just amused me of how many, particularly Canadian fans, were disgusted is probably too strong, but disliked immensely.
Totally.
Pre-game deal.
Yeah.
And I would say to them, like, why are you so worked up on this? Like, just tune in at 7 minutes after the game.
But it's a great thing, though, Kevin, because was it somebody in Vancouver I was talking to, I think it was, that we were having a discussion, like, why doesn't every rink do it like Vegas does?
For sure, they should, yeah.
But you know what? The answer was, like, in the city, I'm pretty sure it was Vancouver, the sponsors and everything didn't want that. They didn't want that atmosphere. That was kind of contrary.
Here's my point. When I say everyone should do it like Vegas, everyone should have their own unique situation.
Right.
Like, Nashville's shtick is in the playoffs, you don't know who's going to sing the anthem until they walk out. And because they're Nashville and they have a lot of top talent there, it's an exciting event.
Right.
When you go in, like, who's it going to be? There's a little bit of a buzz, and then they walk out on the ice, and all of a sudden you hear, people, kind of oohing and on and so forth. And, people guess. And so that's part of their shtick. Now, rightfully so, the people say, people should do it the way Montreal does it. Like, no one does pregame ceremony. Saying that's true.
Yep.
Like, there's nothing like when you see a Montreal.
It's Montreal, right? You can't do Montreal in.
But Nashville and Vegas are not Montreal.
Exactly.
So, they don't have that. That history that includes Jean Beliveau and Rocket Richard and Andre Richard and Jacques Plante and Jacques Laperriere and Larry Robinson.
And you go to a place like Florida and you go, like, the building's empty and there's no excitement or whatever.
Right.
Like, what are they?
but getting back to where we started this discussion. So my point to Kenny Holland was, well, yeah, that's true, but that doesn't mean that because you guys charge so much, you shouldn't spice up your in-game presentation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it like the octopus throwing.
Right. Oh, I know. And because they're not always going to be winning too, right?
No,
so like
right.
You want those people. It's like when you go to a restaurant. If you have a bad meal at that restaurant, you're probably not going back to the restaurant. Like if you go to a game at Joe Louis Arena and it's a bad game and they're not winning, there's some people just gonna say, well, I don't want to go. It's not. I'll sit at home and watch it. Right.
Yeah.
So, I agree.
The game is still the product. Like that's why we love the sport. We're not going to, if anything, the loud music sometimes, I just like it.
Yeah.
I like to. I've always said that that the NFL is almost if you couldn't market a sport, create one that's better than the NFL is for marketing. Like you're sitting in the stands. I used to go with my son, and there's 12 seconds of action, and then you have 35 seconds to talk with your son or your buddy about what you just saw, and then you get another 11 seconds of action. And then
that's why it's so good on TV too. I never thought of that, right? Because I love watching it on TV.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's the same thing on TV. You got the 35 seconds to drink a beer, to check the what's going on, down on the ticker, the other scores and everything else. Like it's just perfect. Like with hockey, sometimes, you go with a buddy, you never talk to your buddy because you're watching the game. It's back and forth, and
that's true. Yeah, especially the game, right? Yeah. Oh,
yeah. So, anyway.
Very good.
Well, as usual, we've gone a little bit longer than we should have. But I hope you enjoyed this conversation. We'll be back next week. And, it won't be long until January 1st will be here. And
see what happens.
I'm not sure we're going to be playing games, but
we got some time. But I'm with you. I don't think we're going to play on January 1st, but we'll see.
All right.
Thanks. See you next week.